Today we're making soda kombucha again. The last time we tried this, we poured soda directly into our kombucha bottle just to see how it tasted. And it tasted not good at all. It was both too sour and the flavor of the soda was too weak. It was too sour because the pH of cola, as I later found out, is about 2.5. And that's more sour than our kombucha, and it's more sour even than lemon juice. So I think that threw things off a little bit. As for the flavor being too weak, even though we used a lot of soda in our kombucha bottle, we were still making a third of a soda flavor an entire bottle of kombucha, which is admittedly unfair. So I think the solution to both problems is a concentrated simple syrup. And so today I'm using 2 herb blends to make our simple syrup. The first is from Nelson's Tea, and it is a root beer blend containing all of this. And then from Fraser Tea, we have a rum and cola black tea blend, because that is the closest I could get to a pre-made cola herb blend. And I will just say now that any complaints I have about the kombucha produced is purely on myself, and not a reflection of how these teas were intended to be drank. And I'm using these pre-made tea blends because when it's a kombucha I expect to remake again, I want to start with the laziest possible option and work my way up from there to see what I can get away with. My usual solution for making a concentrated tea syrup is to use 4 times strength in the tea and then to add an equal portion of sugar. For this experiment, I've done a ½ cup. I've steeped as recommended, strained, and added an equal portion of sugar. Give these a taste. Oh, deeply root beery. This does smell like a believable Coke, but this is dead-on root beer. Although it does have the distinct advantage of actually being the root beer blend. Now, if I actually wanted to fine-tune this recipe, I would make a flavor concentrate, and then I would do the sugars separately. In this case, though, I just want to sort of get a ballpark, just to find out if we're on the right track. And now I think we're ready to start bottling. Our kombucha this week is a black tea blend. I'm going to make an experimental batch here in our graduated cylinder before we bottle, just to make sure that the flavorings are just right. My bottles hold about 475 milliliters of kombucha. I'm expecting, just from experience, to use about 30 grams of our syrup, so I want to add about 445 grams of kombucha to our test. And I will say I'm a little concerned about our cola syrup because it's not very strongly flavored. It kind of gets buried by the sugar. It's just a very subtle sort of flavor. And just like with any kombucha, I'm aiming for it to be a little bit too sweet when we bottle, because some of that sugar is going to be used up for carbonation. That was 16 grams, and that just tastes like sour kombucha. We're at 31 now. Little Coke notes. I think half sugar probably would have been the way to go. And that should be ready to bottle. And we'll call that bottle number 1. And next up, I actually want to make the same kombucha again, except this time I'm going to add our tea leaves that were left over directly to the bottle so it can steep longer, just to see if that's a little bit more flavorful. Hopefully that doesn't get a little too astringent from steeping too long, but I guess we'll find out. And that ended up being 47 grams of our simple syrup, which is bananas, but less than an actual Coke, so perhaps making it terrible in its own unique way. And that'll be our bottle number 2. For our root beer, it's the same plan. I'm going to start with 445 grams of our kombucha. I'm going to jump straight to 30 grams of syrup. flavor of the root beer is still not very strong. I'm going to add another 5 and then call it. So this is 57 grams of added simple syrup, which is this amount of actual added sugar. No, I'm going to add another 7. It's not just the sweetness I'm worried about. The actual flavor of the root beer is not coming through very strongly. Kind of like we had with the Coke. So I'm going to remake the same bottle again. And to solve that flavoring issue, we're going to do the same solution as before. So we're going to add our steeped tea directly to the bottle. So that is our second root beer, and now we're ready to carbonate, which does present another problem because when you're using pure white sugar, it does tend to stress out the yeast a little easier, makes them go dormant, makes carbonation very slow. I find that I have peak carbonation when I add about 2 to 3 grams of added sugar, and we've added quite a bit more than that. So I think we're going to struggle. So I'm going to say we'll go about 4 days at 78 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit. We'll see what it looks like then. So, we are back. Time has passed. Let's drink some soda. And we're going to start with our cola. Our cola without leaves. And I would say my biggest concern here was that we added a lot of sugar, not much flavor, and I think it's going to be hard to carbonate. Not a lot of bubbles going on here. Let's see. Oh, I was not expecting any trace of that, but that's pretty dead on. And this was a rum and cola tea blend, so there actually was supposed to be some lime in there. And I do taste some sourness, not distinctly lime, but also not distinctly coming from the flavor addition. Could also just be for the fact that this is kombucha, and there's some sourness there. But it is too sweet. Kind of like drinking a cola syrup from the bottom of a slushie. It's interesting, but I feel like we need to add half sugar and try the syrup again because the flavor, I think, is dead on. It's too sweet. I was not expecting any of those cola notes to come out, but let's try the next. This is the cola again with those spent tea leaves. A little better carbonation. Smells stronger of cola. Oh, that's really good. That's it's more sour. The sweetness is subdued a lot. The cola flavor comes through prominently. There's better carbonation. That's really good. I think I still would cut down the sugar a little bit, but kind of the sweetness of a soda. Keeping the tea leaves in there is a huge improvement. Ooh. But boy, is that sweet. I think I would tinker from this recipe. Less sugar still. Maybe even just fully separate the flavoring of the tea and the sugar. Just add them separately. Because otherwise that's going to be a lot of trial and error. Definitely going to keep the tea leaves in next time though. Next up we've got our root beer. Ooh. Much better carbonation. It smells like root beer, but it smells like a kind of sour kombucha smell on top of it. Almost like a real bad fart on top of a root beer. Kind of like with the cola, the root beer flavor is there, but it's much too sweet. I think we need both more flavor and a lot less sugar. Probably half. And yeah, just a stronger flavor, I think, to cover up that kombucha because it's root beer, but then it's also the smell of sour, funky kombucha, which gives it sort of an unpleasant scent there. And then the taste is kind of the same way. There's root beer, but then there's also sour, funky kombucha. They're not mixing anywhere in the middle there. Let's try it with the herbs, though. Better carbonation down my leg. Perhaps give me a moment here. It smells like root beer. And this time it smells only like root beer. There's no kombucha funk to it. It smells very sweet, smells very fragrant. And that taste of kombucha is gone as well. It's just root beer, but it's too sweet. Just way too sweet. Because at least with the soda, it's much more acidic than kombucha is by about a power of 10. So with this amount of sugar, it's balanced out. But here in this kombucha, it's just overpowering. The root beer flavor is great. We'll just need to fix that sugar a lot. And so the only solution is just to run it again. Let's try one more time. I'll meet you back here. We are back, and I've got 6 new experiments because I changed my mind along the way. Instead of fully separating out the flavor from the syrup, I did decide that I wanted just about half strength, so instead that's what I did. I used a half cup of water to brew my tea, still at 4 times strength, and then I used a quarter cup of sugar, and that gave us a syrup that was 41.6% sugar. And so for my first 2 experiments with each bottle, I used 2 different levels of syrup. Let's see where we're at. These were also carbonated for 3 days. I'm going to start with the cola. No real carbonation, that could have gone another day. But this had 52 grams of our simple syrup added, which is about 42% as much sugar as a regular Coca-Cola. Still smells just like Coke. Oh, that's really good. That is almost dead on perfect. It's got the acidity that you would expect in a Coca-Cola. It's got the full flavor. It's got a lot of sweetness. Yeah, that to me is absolutely spot on. And I say this not with ego because no one's watching this. It's just absolutely perfect. But I made another that's a little bit more syrup. This next one is 64 grams of our syrup, which is about 52% of a Coca-Cola sugar level. There's carbonation, but it's not perfect carbonation. A little richer, a little sweeter, a little too sweet. This does take it more towards a slushy syrup sort of consistency. But I feel like it still might be the right choice to go with, because if we let this sit for another day to get better carbonated, we would lose some of the sweetness. So perhaps having it a little too sweet and sit for an extra day, I think that would be better. 4 days with this. That would be the one I want to try next. Eerily like Coca-Cola though. But that's not my last Coke experiment, because as I said earlier, my goal is to be as lazy as possible. So let's try the next. For all of our initial bottles, we steeped the tea, we made a syrup out of it, we added that to the bottle along with that spent tea leaves. But I wanted to know if we could save that step, so instead of brewing the tea, I just threw the tea leaves directly into the bottle, along with pure simple syrup, 30 grams in this case, which brought it in line with the first bottle today, because it was about 21.5 grams of added sugar. Because if this tastes the same, then we just saved ourselves some work. Still smells like Coke. It almost tastes more strongly of the tea. I think I need to taste them side by side. It does look like it had better carbonation though. So we've got our cola syrup and we've got our simple syrup. This one smells more yeasty, this one smells more floral. Better carbonation, more flavor. I think this one wins. Yeah, I don't even think I have to try that again. This one was much better. The flavors are more subdued. There's more yeasty kombucha funk, which I didn't really detect the first time, but when I'm trying the two together, this one's the clear winner. And the carbonation's pretty good. I think I would want a little bit more sugar, though. And that's so much less work. The only thing is that that scent is really floral, and it's interesting. There's a lot of depth to it. There's a lot of things going on with it, but it's not like Coke, because Coke's kind of got a singular aroma to it. This kind of has a variety of things going on. Yeah, this one's trash now. This is the way to go. I think just a little extra sugar. But let's try the root beer. So now we've got all the same experiments again, except with our root beer. So for our first bottle, we have 52 grams of added syrup, also at 41.6% sugar. Much better carbonation off the start. Very root beery. Delicious. A little too sour, but good depth of flavor, good carbonation. There is enough sweetness to mask the fact that it's a sour kombucha, but it's still like a couple extra grams. Yeah, just dead on. People in my life would be so impressed if everyone I knew didn't hate root beer. Uh-oh. So glad that didn't explode in my face. Stronger carbonation. I don't want to drink all this. This is our 64 grams of added syrup, though. Richer, spicier smell. Still a little too sour, but a little too sour and a little too, there's kind of like a star anise flavor in there that's a little too prominent. But I think I like it better than the first. But a little too much of that star anise smell. I'm not sure which of the herbs or spices that's coming from. I'm afraid to open this last one, though. All right, this time we're going to take more precautions. I think that plug of herbs saved us. So once again, we've got our bottle of unsteeped herbs with our plain simple syrup versus our tea syrup. Very prominent, funky kombucha smell. Predominantly root beer smell. So it's just kombucha with some weird herbs in it. That did not work well. And I think the difference is with our cola, that was a black tea blended with other herbs. So I think it was able to steep and get out those flavors just fine. But for our root beer, it's mostly spices, barks, things that are pretty hard. And I think without steeping in hot water, that flavor wasn't able to get out. It's still a fine, a little overly sweet kombucha, but it's not root beer. And this is root beer that tastes like star anise. Let's go back to our first bottle. We know this one's out. The stronger syrup smells better. Yeah, this is the only one that actually tastes like it's a soda. 64 grams of our 2-to-1 root beer syrup. That was a winner. For Coca-Cola, definitely just throw it straight into the bottle. And just with a little extra sugar, I think we would be there. I think we've got two clear winners that would be perfectly satisfactory, and I think you would be very, very surprised to find out that they were kombucha. Because these taste just sort of like a craft brewed soda. They have a lot of flavor, they've got a lot of depth, and they've got a lot less sugar than the store brands. Nothing else to be said. They would need some fine tuning, but I think we're very close. I think we can check those two sodas off the list. So what other sodas should we try next? I feel like ginger ale is never challenging for kombucha. Sprite, we've already made one similar to in our lime episode. We've made a million orange sodas by accident. We've made our fair share of cream sodas. I guess Dr. Pepper and Mountain Dew might be next, but it's going to take a little bit of research. So definitely make these if you're interested. Not that much work, not that expensive to buy the teas. I recommend both. I love both companies. I think they make great products. I would be interested in trying some of the other blends they have that aren't sodas. I bet we can make pretty good syrups out of them as well. But if you can think of any teas or sodas you'd like me to try, just let me know. Otherwise, thank you for joining us. This is Reckless Pooch.